We're back from holiday break. It's the Desmond Johnson Show. It's live here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel, as well as the audio being available for you right now on tobaccoroadsportsradio.com. It's Tuesday. David Glenn from the North Carolina Sports Network, my normal co-host, bi-weekly in the house, coming fresh off a Hollywood break. Special guest in this week, Chris Lee from WRAL and co-host of the Panthers Playbook. He's in the house. We got a lot of stuff to talk about in terms of what we watched over the weekend, in terms of ACC Hoops. Notre Dame is still alive in the college football playoffs. Is it possible for them to actually win the whole thing? We'll get into that and a whole lot more. It's the Desmond Johnson Show. Let's go ahead and roll that intro.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
Yeah, welcome to the Carolinas. Everywhere you go, the sky is Carolina blue, the finest. Live action, feedback, the city needs that. I've been number one, no cap. Here's the recap. Adrenaline is my addiction. I'm about to relapse. Step on the turf if you won't and get your weed whacked. I'm going harder than a martyr on the starter end. It's the heart of man, that's a rap like a cardigan. I'm breaking records, it's fourth and inches, I count the seconds. The over-under's my roar of thunder, my secret weapon. Yeah, the game is to be told. I don't break, I break modes. Follow me on Tobacco Road.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
And welcome into a brand new.
What?
You haven't been on since.
Wait a second.
Intro. Yeah.
Wait a second, man. Hold up.
I totally forgot.
I was jamming that entire time. Like, who is that? Who is that?
That's my guy. He goes by the name of James Diem. Me and him used to do a lot of hip hop stuff like over a decade ago. And he is the voice of our high school football intro too that comes on in the fall when we're doing it. And he just literally, I told him I was going to do this. I was switching the format around, and he just dropped it in my email. I was like, "Yo, check this out!" And I was like, "Ooh,
that was awesome!"
So,
shout out to him.
Shout out to
you.
him.
That was awesome.
You can find his stuff all across the internet. I got my man David Glenn in the house. I got my man Chris Lee in the house. We're going to chop it up real quick on your lunch break. Everybody's back from maybe there's been. My kids are still home. My kids are still home from school because of the snow and the ice that came through a couple of days ago. There's nothing outside. I understand why they did it up in the northwest corner of Forsyth. There's still ice on the roads, but my kid got an extra 2 days of vacation. She's still here. She's still asleep somewhere in the back somewhere. So I think they're going back to school tomorrow. But for the rest of us, we've all had to go back to work. And of course, we're glad to be back here with you on Tobacco Road Sports Radio. DG, I want to get started right off the bat. 3 things I hated this weekend. You know, it's one of the things we typically do on Tuesdays. One of the things I loved watching that Notre Dame playoff game, there was a sequence. You'll know what I'm talking about when I get into it. It's one of the greatest sequences I've ever seen in football, like at any level. Notre Dame's coming out to punt. It's in the fourth quarter. They're up, but they don't want to give the ball back to Georgia. They come out to punt. And I thought it was weird when they first came out because they ran out old school, like 30-40 style. Like they all ran out together at the same speed, same formation. I was like, what's going on here? Maybe this is a Notre Dame thing. And they line up to punt. They count it down to about 15 on the clock. All of them run off. The regular offense comes back on. And Georgia's like caught flat-footed. Like they have no idea what's going on. So they're trying to figure this out. Georgia's trying to substitute. And then it's a matter of, can you get Georgia to jump off sides pretty much? Because they weren't expecting any of this. And that's exactly what happened. Notre Dame keeps the ball. They basically run out the clock and eliminate Georgia from the college football playoffs. I've never seen that happen before at any level of football. Your thoughts on Notre Dame? Because we kind of, in the ACC, we kind of claim them as ours, but they're really not. And we know it, but we kind of try to claim them. So we're sort of like, go Notre Dame, go. What are the chances of Notre Dame actually finishing this off, knowing what's on the other side of the bracket? Notre Dame's taking on Penn State, but the other side of the bracket is Texas versus Ohio State, which might actually be the national championship game. Do you think this Notre Dame team that has won by double digits for I think their last 9 games and has been kind of under the radar all year, can they win the national championship?
It's possible, and it's great to be with you. Happy New Year, Des, to you and your audience. Chris, great to see you. There is that one strange COVID-related year where Notre Dame temporarily, for one season only, was a full member of the ACC in football.
Oh, so great.
we always have that to hang our hat on. I'll say this. Marcus Freeman is a heck of a coach. There's no doubt about it. The Notre Dame defense is national championship caliber, period, end of sentence, no doubt about it. The question is going to be if, for example, the Irish come up against the Buckeyes, who even as the 8th seed look like the best team in America at times. The Buckeyes have NFL caliber guys at running back, NFL caliber guys at wide receiver to go with an elite defense at Ohio State. The question will become, does the Irish offense have enough along with that elite defense to win 2 more games? And it's fun from our neighborhood to watch former Duke quarterback Riley Leonard at the controls. Former Duke defensive end R.J. Oben is playing a big role on defense for the Irish. And there's a young guy named Bryce Young, who's actually from our state as well, one of the more prominent young players for the Fighting Irish. So credit to Marcus Freeman for taking the Irish even this far. They have only that Northern Illinois weird loss on their resume to spoil an otherwise just perfect season. I'm skeptical about whether they'll be able to string together 2 more wins, just given that their offense is not quite as dynamic as at least 2 of the others still in this bracket. But Notre Dame in modern decades has not been even to this level very often the way they were back in the old days. So this is a huge step in the right direction for the Irish, no matter how their season ends.
Chris, your thoughts on this? Because I came away from that Notre Dame game, and I know that Georgia was kind of not the same Georgia they've been the past couple of years, but the SEC in general, it feels like was kind of down in terms of the yapping about how good they are as opposed to what happened on the field. Notre Dame looks legit, but Ohio State looks scary right now. If you had to pick between the 4 that are still out there, and Texas has been playing really good football pretty much all year, unless they see Georgia. So what do you think here? Can Notre Dame actually pull this off, or are you looking at the other side of the bracket?
It's definitely possible for them to. I think that right now, also one of the things that we're looking at that's different for this version of what we know of Notre Dame is that Marcus Freeman is showing who he is as a coach. He basically outcoached, on the other side. This past game, it's the first game. I think that was like the only game of this past weekend I was able to see in full, like, beginning to end. There's others I was able to see spots of it. And he just absolutely did his thing. And also Riley Leonard. And I kind of always felt like the 2 things that got Notre Dame in trouble in the past was that they never really had the quarterback that you could really count on. And just Brian Kelly isn't necessarily the guy that, to me, really gets the players, moving behind him. Marcus Freeman seems to have everybody rallying behind him, and they will literally run through a wall for him. So I think that also can make a difference in how you step up your play. Not that Riley Leonard is this amazing passer, but the fact that he can make the pass, he can also run for a touchdown to keep the chains moving. He can make the right decision, and he can take care of the ball. We saw him do that at Duke, and Duke probably had success they probably should not have had because of Riley Leonard. So now that Notre Dame has this guy, and he has the amount of talent he has around him, who knows what they could do under the right circumstances, in the right situation against a team that maybe is underestimating them, but doesn't think that they have it. So I think it's definitely possible for Notre Dame to potentially win.
Let me. I'm gonna flip over and the 3 things that I liked over the weekend. One of the things I liked over the weekend was Elliot Cadeau, and that was basically from what he did heroic-wise against Notre Dame on Saturday. In case you missed it, Carolina down by 3 seconds left. Carolina comes up the court. It falls in the hands of Elliot Cadeau. He shoots a 3, hits it, gets fouled, completes the 4-point play. Carolina escapes with a win over Notre Dame. I feel like every game's gonna be like this for Carolina. DG, I know I didn't plan to have Chris on this part because he's a Duke fan, but it's okay. It's quite
I'm a journalist first, though.
I know. But I really want to get into this because I see the fire Hubert Davis chants like all over the place, and in my mind, I know he's not on a hot seat. But do you think that there's a chance for him to be on a hot seat based on how this season goes, or is this going to be one of those where they give Hubert a chance to fix this?
I think he gets a chance to fix it, but let's say this. Hubert Davis has one of the more unusual resumes in all of college basketball, right? If we graded his first year, you'd have to give him an A right? I mean, he knocks out Coach K in Durham. He takes the Tar Heels to the national championship game. There were some bumps along the road, but you got to give him an A for that first year.
Nothing even better than that. Yeah. But the
Year
only
two,
thing better is they won it all.
A
Yeah.
plus, if you like. Year two, preseason number one, missed the NCAA tournament entirely. That's an F. No matter whether you love Hubert, hate Hubert, anybody who's not giving him an A or something like it in the first year and an F or something like it in the second year is simply biased in favor of one conclusion or the other. Those of us with more level heads are willing to both give him credit for what he's done really well, including just last year an ACC regular season championship. It's not like the guy's not done anything else. So you might go A, F, what, A minus, I guess, because they didn't advance as far as they'd like in the postseason. So I can promise you this, athletic directors do not get emotional in the heat of the moment the way all those fans you're describing on message boards, of course, overreact to the last thing that happened like they're 2-year-old toddlers. That's the world that we live in. Athletic directors, university presidents don't think that way, because if they did, they would have never reached the point of being an AD at the University of North Carolina, right? So, but here's the bottom line. Hubert Davis should be expected to make the NCAA tournament this year. If he doesn't, it's going to be another failing grade, period. You have RJ Davis, a returning first-team All-American. You have 2 elite freshmen in Ian Jackson and Drake Powell. You have one of the most improved players in college basketball in Seth Trimble, right? You have that point guard, Elliot Cadeau, who's not perfect, but is far better than many. The bottom line is the biggest problem for the Tar Heels will not go away. They simply do not have a high-caliber big man for essentially the first time in more than a half century. And that's not an exaggeration.
No, it's
not.
They
will not have a big man average even 10 points per game. That has not happened in the last 60 years since Dean Smith took over Carolina. So it's not an exaggeration to say there is no other modern era UNC team like this one. Sounds like an exaggeration or hyperbole. It's not. I've done the research. It's not. There's no comparable team in the last 60 years. So can Hubert get this oddly constructed roster where they're not going to be great on defense? They got a bunch of 6-foot guys on the perimeter and nobody to protect the rim. You could be the reincarnation of John Wooden and you're not going to have a great defense with that personnel. However, they can be really good offensively with an unconventional, smaller lineup that's hard to defend. And when it gets to SMU this week, they play Pitt twice later. They, of course, as always, play Duke twice later this season. They got to grab some of those wins to go with the very impressive win over UCLA, a nice win over Dayton. And if they do enough of those good things and finish where I think they will, top 4 in the ACC, they're going to be on the right side of the cut line on Selection Sunday. If they're not, that's when the heat will ramp up on Hubert Davis, certainly in the fan base. But I don't think Bubba Cunningham would be ready to pull any triggers.
The game before last, the Louisville game, it felt like Louisville was playing volleyball against Carolina. Like they just played above them. Like they just kept lobbing it like they're over top of the guard. Like it got frustrating watching it at home. Like, wow, they really are playing us like we're a middle school team. Like they're just throwing it over top of our heads. And the guards are small, but they're very talented and can score. You're right, though. I was sitting there thinking about it. I'm 46, and I've been a lifelong Carolina fan. The only team I can think of that's close to where they are size-wise is probably 2019, the one that had Luke May at center, and he was 6'8", but he was ACC Player of the Year or whatever, like the year before or whatever it was. So it's not like you had like a scrub at that position. And I'm not calling Jalen Washington the scrub. It just feels like I'm used to Carolina having 3 at minimum big men.
Correct.
A power forward and a center that can run, and they run like deer, and they're going to go up and down the court all night long. And then you have a third guy that can spell either one of them. And if you look at any of the top Carolina teams in the past, they've always had like a power forward, like a James Worthy or Antoine Jameson type at power forward that can rebound. Harrison Ingram, just like a year or so ago. They don't have that right now. That's not Jalen Withers. That's not any power forward really on the roster. Maybe Drake Powell can grow into that, but that's not really his game. And they always have a center. Like, even if it's like a Serge Zwicker, like they always have a center that can get you those kind of things and just drop it into the paint. And I don't know if it's more, and the reason why I asked this question, because I don't know if it's more Hubert changing the offensive philosophy of Carolina that we've all known for years, that Dean Smith, Roy Williams kind of offense, or he just struck out in the portal, struck out on the, outside trying to get a guy to come in here to do this, and they just got to go with what they got. And they don't have enough. It's going to be interesting. They're not going to be a 1 or 2 seed or anything like that. So Carolina fans, just calm down. I think there's only going to be one of those coming out of the ACC, and we'll talk about those with Chris here in just a second. But they get in as a 5 seed, 6 seed, something like that. Considering the roster and the way it's constructed right now, I'll be fine with that. And they're entering an easier part of their schedule starting tonight. SMU is like 11-3 or something like that, but it's still an easier part of the schedule. 3 of the next 4 at home, if I'm not mistaken, for Carolina. Over 8 miles down the road in Durham, Duke is ranked 4th in the AP poll that came out yesterday, and they are the only ACC team in the AP poll. Chris, how does it make you feel knowing that Duke has kind of separated themselves from the pack, but knowing that the pack itself is not very good compared to the rest of the nation, SEC in particular?
Did you want the journalist answer, or did you?
Say it with your chest. Give it to me. Give me a emotional Duke response.
No. I just, I don't think, me, I'm not going to have anything too overly emotional anyway. But like, I think that as a fan of the ACC, it's hard to see, right? Because that you would want to feel like the schedule that Duke is going to have night in and night out is what's going to help them, in their seeding, down the line and all of that. And I've always, one of the things I never liked about Gonzaga, and I never picked Gonzaga in the postseason. Like, no matter where they're at, they can make it to the national championship, and I feel like they're going to lose, which they did against Carolina. And it's just mainly because, like, I feel like they play a lot of cupcakes during the year. And when it gets real, like the first few rounds, okay, you've got a little bit more juice because you're not as beat up as other teams. But then it starts getting real and you can't handle it. And that's always been how I've seen Gonzaga. And so from the perspective of Duke, is that going to be what Duke is going to be this year? Are they going to get a little lax through January, February, the early part of March? Maybe the ACC tournament, falls in a way that they can kind of walk through and win 3 in a row because they're going to have the double bye if they keep playing this way. And then, does it impact them in the NCAA tournament? And all of a sudden you have this season that it was almost sandwiched in a way to where you have tough games to start, and the meat of it is cupcake. And then you have tough games at the end. And how do you handle that with that group? So that will be the thing I'd worry about for them and their sake. But I think that the part that's very encouraging is how they've handled the games that they have played so far. Like, even in the Kentucky and Kansas games, like those are just a couple of possessions away of going the other way for Duke. And they could be number 1 in the nation right now and undefeated with one of the best resumes out there. It's not like, they're completely out of games even when they have lost it. So those are the things I'd worry about, but I do have enough faith in this group and how they're constructed, and also in John Shire to get that turnaround, because I think that under John Shire, the first 2 years, Duke was soft. There's been plenty of times I felt like they showed up at games and like, we're Duke, we're supposed to win, and people took it to them. And when it happened too much, they backed off, right? And I honestly think that's what's going on with Carolina right now. Outside of the fact that they are they need a big man, and it was the worst offensive rebounding team since 02-03 or something like that. Yeah. So I think that's part of what's going on with Carolina right now as well. And I don't think they like each other too much. That's another thing. I don't know if you want to talk about that today, but I don't know if they like each other. And that goes a long way, because I think even as a small team, they could still really do a lot of damage, but it matters if you like the person that you're passing the ball to. Yeah. But
there's chemistry, something.
Yeah, something's off.
But that's happened with Carolina before. Hell, some of the most talented team, 94 comes to mind immediately when I think of
2 years ago.
2 years ago, where they just didn't quite mesh completely the way it was going on. I think with Carolina too, in particular, they don't really have a vocal leader. Like, RJ Davis isn't really a vocal guy. He never really has been. Yeah. And I'm looking through the roster to find him, and I don't have a guy that's like that guy that everyone's going to kind of turn to and be like, hey, what do we need to do or whatever. Maybe ends up being one of these freshmen. Ian Jackson's on a tear right now, but can't really depend on that. I don't know. We'll save that for another day. What I would really want to get into is the Carolina Panthers. I just want to give them a little applause, man, for us, and really that's for us, for the Panther fans that have stuck around for 6 years and watched this happen to get to this point where we're like, yes, we're finally going into an offseason where for the first time since 2019, we're going to have the same head coach, same offensive coordinator, same defensive coordinator, same starting quarterback since 2019. Like, this is what we've been going through here in the Carolinas. And to end it the way they did yesterday, again, my man Stu was like, look, I know people are mad that, we lost a couple of draft positions or whatever. Guys, here's the secret. There's not really much of a difference between number 6 and number 8. And we've had some pretty good luck at number 8. J.C. Horn was the number 8
Christian
pick. McCaffrey was the number 8 pick. There's dudes out there at number 8 that we can get that can help this team. From both of you, starting off with you, DG, I want to talk about the visual ascent of Bryce Young comeback season this year, because he literally was at the lowest of lows back in September. We didn't think we were going to see him again in Carolina, period, the way he had played. For him to go from that to doing Steph Curry stuff on the field on Sunday, throwing passes and turning around before they're even caught type stuff, the confidence level was just like, your thoughts on Bryce Young and what does it mean for the Carolina Panthers now going into the season for the first time really since 2019, knowing who their starting quarterback is going to be next year and having some conviction behind him to build with him. Like, it's a different type of thing going into it. Your thoughts on what you saw on Sunday and the season as a whole from Bryce?
Isn't it crazy that a family car crash with Andy Dalton could end up being some historic story that gave Bryce Young an earlier than expected second chance and this opportunity to strut his stuff down the stretch the way you were describing there, Des? Obviously, instability has been a theme of the David Tepper era as the owner of the Carolina Panthers. Just the rotating head coaches, the changes at GM, et cetera. It says a lot to go into the offseason knowing who your coordinators are going to be, knowing who your head coach is going to be, knowing who your quarterback is going to be. And that just allows for, I think it was the long snapper, John Jansen, who's been there forever. I mean, even he was quoted saying, this game is hard under all circumstances. It's extra hard if everybody's not on the same page. And at least with that lack of the turnstile at those key positions, you have a chance to draft to a vision, right? If the vision keeps changing, well, whatever you drafted to the last vision might not fit your new vision very well. If the vision stays the same, you give your GM a chance. For example, I would start with the Panthers just gave up more points than any team in the history of the NFL. Now, I know it's a 17-game regular season, and that factors into those sorts of, accumulation type numbers, but they were pretty darn bad statistically on that side of the ball, especially against the run. So you got to get a dude in the front 7. Now, it doesn't matter whether that's through free agency, through the draft, whatever, but you need more dudes in the front 7 because guys like Brian Burns, Frankie Louvu no longer there. And you need the next generation of those kinds of talents, because if you can't stop the run in this league, you might be entertaining, but you're not going to win, period. You're not going to win at a high level. You're not going to be a consistent playoff team. So start there. You got to believe that Bryce Young is your guy, and there's evidence that he can be now that we saw what happened this past week and prior to that. So it's going to be, I think, a more optimistic entry to the 2025 season than what we've had for most of the David Tepper era. And that should be a fun feeling for all those Carolina Panthers fans all over our region.
Chris, I kind of, me and you've been in the same boat in terms of fighting off haters on social media, the claim that we've thrown Bryce Young under the bus and we don't like him and hate him and all this other stuff. When in actuality, we've all just been like, we're just watching what's on right in front of us. Like we're literally just looking at what he's doing, and we're not going to baby him. We're not going to hold his hand like while he's trying to figure this out. He's the number 1 overall pick for a reason. We got him for a reason. You're not supposed to have to surround him with stuff in order for him to be better. I want to go more towards the defensive side with you in terms of them deciding to keep Ejiro Evero as defensive coordinator, because there was kind of some mumblings about maybe they should move on. I took it as, to me, that was one of the clearest indications in my mind that David Tepper is a man of his word and is actually not really that much involved in day-to-day operations right now with the Carolina Panthers. Because if he was, I feel like Ejiro would have been fired on Monday. It felt like a Dave Canales decision to keep him, believing in his scheme and whatnot. Did you feel like EJ should have stayed, or did you want to kick the tires on a Robert Saleh or just move on to somebody else?
Yes, that's the short answer, but it's hard for me to kind of keep going out there and I don't like calling for people's jobs and stuff like that, right? Like, because also, just the realistic, portion of me, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know, the different things folks are dealing with. But at the same time, my argument has been, there are folks who've said like, hey, he is a good coach. And I don't doubt that he is. And as a matter of fact, I really like him as a coach. But also when you put out a historically bad defense and you're not the first defensive coordinator or coordinator from any side of the ball who's had a lot of injuries to deal with, and your team still cannot stop the run, and anything that a team wants to get, they can get. Like the Falcons were down in that last drive at the end of the game, and they were running the ball. And I think it was like 4 of 5 plays, like in the middle of the field, were all runs, and they were just gashing them, just marching down. And you don't normally see that on a 2-minute drive, So it's really indicative of what the Panthers are on defense. And no, they don't have the best roster. Yes, a lot of folks were injured and things like that. But at the same time, like, you still have to figure it out. People hate when I bring this up, but 2 years ago with Steve Wilks, it's not like the offense, and Steve Wilks is not an offensive guy. It's not like the offense was this amazing juggernaut, yet they went out there on December 24th, that particular year, against the Lions, who ended up being really good the next year, and had the best offensive output they've ever had just by running the ball. And then it ended up opening up things for Sam Darnold as a passer. And it's kind of like, if you can look at that and see what somebody can do as a coach and bring it up, then why can't somebody else be held to that standard? But, if Dave Canales believes in him, and if they are able to get him some players through the draft and through free agency, I mean, the way they focused on offense in the offseason, they definitely need to do that for defense. Offense, get you a wide receiver who can take the top off, and, maybe some more help on offensive line, maybe a true center, so you don't have to have this revolving door, and maybe one other piece. Otherwise, everything needs to be on defense, really, and that's where you need to focus all your attention.
I don't think they'll do a Matt Rule all 7 picks go defense type of draft, but But you have 9 picks, and you can make 7 and do 2 with 2. Yeah, absolutely right. And then Derek Brown coming back will be like a draft pick in itself in the middle there. So they got some things to work with. I'm just excited. This is the first offseason again in like 6 or 7 years where I'm like, okay, we're not starting from behind. We're not starting in a hole where we're trying to just figure out where we are or who we are. They're starting to establish a bit of an identity, and they're starting to establish one of those. They're kind of getting this little thing where it's like, you don't really want to mess with Bryce Young in that offense right now. And they're not even set in terms of, like you said, Chris, like personnel that they're going to get. It's the Dan Morgan show, like from now until the summertime, in terms of filling in those gaps and doing it. And I've got a lot of faith in Dan Morgan. Like, if it's a lot easier to get a job done when you have a visualization of how you want it to be done, as opposed to just walking into a dark room and trying to figure out what tools go where or whatever. Dan Morgan feels like he has a plan. So I'm very excited about that. It's wild card weekend in the NFL coming up on Friday. I know we got a week to go before we get there, but I wanted to ask both of you, who is the one wild card team that you feel can challenge one of the 1 seeds in their respective conference? And it's a loaded question because you got a 14-win wild card team running around in the NFC. You've got a lot of, it feels deeper in the AFC, where you could have a 11-win Chargers team that's like, I think, the 4th or the 5th seed right now. Is there a wild card in either conference that you're looking at has the best shot to make it to the Super Bowl, meaning they have to get through a 1 probably to get there? Or do you think it's going to be chalk, 1 versus 1, Kansas City, Detroit, when it's all said and done? DG, let's start off with you.
Yeah, it feels like it's never chalk. I mean, there's a lot of good teams out there. I do think the Chargers are a dangerous team. After winning 11 games, they look well coached to me. The Ravens are good on that side of the bracket. Obviously, Buffalo's really, really good. The Chiefs are the trendsetter for multiple years now. So it's going to be hard to make a really long run. But in terms of winning a game, I think they could pull that off. And on the other side of the bracket, I think Minnesota's a a really good football team that just, was stuck in the same division with the Detroit Lions. So the Vikings are going to be a hard out. They just look like a well-balanced team to me, a well-coached team. I love my Philadelphia Eagles, of course, in the NFC, but there's a heck of a lot of competition on both sides. And that's one of the things that makes the NFL playoffs so much fun. I mean, you have your favorites, but whereas I think college football is sometimes more predictable, I find it very hard to consistently predict who's going to beat whom in the National Football League, especially come playoff time.
Any given Sunday. Any word on Jalen Hurts? I know he's in concussion protocol. Have they said anything? I'm assuming
no clearance yet. I think they're optimistic, but I haven't seen anything final yet.
Chris, your thoughts? Is there a wild card out there that kind of has you like, they got the best shot, or are you looking Kansas City, Detroit here in about a month?
I do think that one of the top seeds from each of the conferences will be the ones who make it at the end. But to answer your question, if there's a wild card who could do it, not saying that they will, but who could, I think it's Denver. They only got blown out once, and that was, I believe, against the Ravens. They had a really bad game against the Ravens. Otherwise, they pretty much show up for every game, and it's usually within a possession, and they're doing that with a rookie quarterback. And you can't discount what Sean Payton is as a head coach, and this time of the year, what he can kind of scheme up and draw up and also get out of his guys, because he can get the most out of his guys. And they have a legit defense, right? And so at this time of the year, this is when you need your defense to shine the most. And if you just get your rookie quarterback to just take care of the ball, you could end up surprising somebody like the Bills who they're playing this weekend. So, if there's anybody who could outside of Minnesota, I think it's kind of unfair to Minnesota is a wild card, but there any other division in the
There's
NFC.
Never been a 14-win wild card like in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, it's weird to look at them. So I think Minnesota obviously is one, but an actual wild card team, I think Denver has a shot. Do I think it'll happen? No, but to answer your question, it is Denver.
Two things. You're the second person in the past hour and a half that said Denver to me. Stu said the same thing about Denver, and maybe I'm sleeping on the Denver Broncos. I don't know. Two, when it comes to Minnesota, fun fact, Minnesota is 14-1 when they're not playing Detroit this year. The one team that they lost to is the team they're having to go cross country to go play in the LA Rams this upcoming weekend in the wild card round. And the LA, look, I'm kind of leaning towards the Rams, to be honest. The Rams are the wild card team I'm looking at that no one's talking about. Their offense is legit. Their defense is solid. The
Rams are a wild card team. They're hosting.
Oh, that's right. They are. They're the 4, right?
Yeah, and they won their division.
They're in wild card round, I guess you could say. Yeah. But
okay.
You know what I mean? But out of that round, who do you think could do it? But the Rams, Minnesota. There's something about Minnesota. Maybe it's because I'm just older, but it feels like whenever they have a team like this, they never make it to the Super Bowl. Something always happens. 98, that crazy team with Chris Carter and Randy Moss, they were 15-1. If I'm not mistaken, help me out here, DG. They lost on a 30-something yard field goal by their field goal kicker who hadn't missed a field goal all year or something like that. And I'm not going to the Super Bowl. Then you had Brett Favre in 2009 throw an interception at the end that caused the Vikings to lose. They don't go to the Super Bowl. And then not that long ago, a couple years back, their field goal kicker missed 2 or 3 in a playoff game or something at home, short ones, little chip kicks, and they didn't go then. So I'm not trying to put the voodoo hex on Minnesota, but I feel like every time they have one of these teams, it's just oh man, they've got 13, 14 wins. They flame out early, and it did not help watching Sam Darnold high selling passes the other night on Detroit too in a big game. So
I think that's the part. It's the fact that Sam Darnold hasn't been here yet.
Yes,
that's the only thing that makes me, I guess, not have a lot of faith in Minnesota, is that Sam Darnold has been used to being either a backup in this position or not making the playoffs at all. And so I think he's the question mark for them right now.
And the sad thing is, on the other side, when you look at Detroit, Jared Goff's been to a Super Bowl. He has experience. So I'm Detroit feels like they've ascended in the proper order you expect for an NFL team to go over a 2-3 year stretch of growing from being horrible. You get your coach in place, you find your quarterback, you start to believe in yourself, you start winning, you stumble a little bit one year, and then the next year it just all comes together. It feels like Detroit's on that path. The only problem is Pat Mahomes is at the end of that rainbow somewhere, like somewhere down there. And I've learned not to bet against the man. I know they basically gift wrapped a playoff berth for Denver on Sunday by just sitting everybody. So don't let that box score fool you. It wasn't like they went and just beat the brakes off Kansas City 38.
Right.
Nobody was there. So that's kind of what happened there. But
hey, by the way, to bring it full circle real quickly, I wonder how many Carolina Panthers fans, while watching this year's NFL playoffs, are going to flash back to that famous photo of Sam Darnold walking next to Baker Mayfield in Carolina Panthers uniforms. It's just crazy when a certain talent is in the wrong place at the wrong time. They can faceplant. The same two guys with the right franchise, the right coaches, the right personnel around them are dancing in the playoffs while the Panthers are home yet again.
I think of that quarterback room at one point. Wasn't Cam Newton there at the same time too? Like at some point, or with one of them? No, was that the following year? That was the following year.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, when
no, Darnold was there. Yeah, it was Darnold
Baker. I think was Baker traded by that time already.
I thought they let Baker go at the end of the year or something. But there was a stretch when they brought Cam in mid-season 2021. I want to say it was the year Darnold was the starter to start off with. Start off like 2-1. I was on here comparing him to Troy Aikman, just being crazy, and then it just fell off a cliff. And then they brought in Cam. Darnold was the quarterback then. I want to say they brought in Baker the next year.
Okay.
So
yeah, that makes sense.
In that stretch, they had Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Cam Newton came back. They're just running through quarterbacks. So so I feel really good about what happened on Sunday with Carolina against Atlanta. And the wildcard weekend is going to be fun. College playoffs are going to be fun this weekend. We ran a little bit over, but I thought we might with these two guys in here. So definitely glad to be back from holiday break. Tomorrow we've got Matt Alquiza from Sports Illustrated. He's going to answer the question that all Charlotte Hornets fans are asking. Are we doing this for Cooper Flagg, or are we just really bad because like something's going on? Charlotte hasn't won a game in like a month. It's really, really, really bad in Charlotte. So we'll talk with him and we'll get best bets from Ryan Stone on those college football playoffs and more tomorrow. So we will see you tomorrow live, 12:30 p.m. Wednesday here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel. And you can hear us online at tobaccoroadsportsradio.com. For Chris Lee, for David Glenn, I'm Desmond Johnson. You've been watching the Desmond Johnson Show. We will check with you tomorrow.